Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 3 of Spirit of Le Mans, the series where I'm comparing all of the top prototypes on Gran Turismo 6. So this time, as you can see, it's featuring the Toyota TS030 Hybrid, which is one of the best Le Mans cars on Gran Turismo 6, one of my personal favourites, and one of the ones that I use the most. So, without any further ado, let's get straight into it. So here we are first of all on our city test track, Monaco. So as I've said before in the first 2 episodes of this series, the most important things for a track like this are low end acceleration, a lack of wheel spin, quick sharp handling and good brakes. So what is this car like for those kind of attributes? Well, as I already said, it's the least powerful of all the Le Mans prototypes. So unfortunately, I'm only going to give it a 3 out of 5 on acceleration. Because although with the electric boost system it is quick off the line, the boost only lasts for a couple of seconds, and then after that virtually all of the other Le Mans cars can leave it standing. So it's only getting a 3 out of 5 on acceleration. Now to make up for that though, its low speed handling, I'm giving it a strong 5 out of 5 because the handling is brilliant. And overall on a city track, I'm going to give it, again, a 5 out of 5. It's one of the best city racing Le Mans prototypes that you can get on the game, mainly due to the fact that it has less power, it's much easier to control, there's less wheel spin, and it's just better to drive on city tracks than the majority of other Le Mans prototypes. So overall, on city tracks, it's a very, very good car. So now let's go over to Ascari to see what it's like on a moderate speed technical track. So here we are now on Ascari, and as I've mentioned before, the most important aspects of the car on this track are more your mid-range acceleration, that mid-range handling for the higher speeds, say 70 or 80 mile an hour corners, and just general drivability really, because on a track like Ascari you need to be comfortable with the car, you need to know what it's capable of, and you don't want to be fighting against the car all the time because that's just not conducive to a good lap time. So for that mid-range handling, I'm going to give this car a 4 out of 5. I gave it a 5 on the city tracks, but for mid-range tracks like this, I'm only going to give it a 4. Now, I'm giving it a 4 because the handling isn't awful, it's still a 4 out of 5, but the handling is a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more sketchy, as you can see from the replay here. It's getting the tail out a bit on some of those moderate speed corners, and that does make it a bit, like I said, sketchy, which makes you kind of feel that maybe you can't push the car as fast as you want to be, because it does suffer from a bit of snap oversteer sometimes. Or in certain corners. It's not a constant thing, you can work around it, but that's why I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for mid-range handling. Now on this track, or in other words a technical track, moderate speed technical tracks, I'm still going to give it a 5 out of 5 because it is still a great car, and if you learn how to drive it well, which doesn't take very long, you can get very, very good times with it. Now for brakes, which are very important on all tracks, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 because the brakes are really, really good on this car. So that's about it for this track. So now let's go to the final test track of Spa. So here we are on the final track that we're going to be testing on Spa. Now, as I've said before, pretty much all of the Le Mans prototypes love this track, but obviously some are better than others. And as I mentioned earlier, the TS030 does have the least power of all the Le Mans prototypes, and although it is quick off the line with its e-boost system, the mid-range and top-end acceleration isn't that great on this track, and primarily its top-end acceleration and top speed do kind of let it down on high-speed tracks. So overall, for high-speed tracks, I'm going to have to only give this car a 3 out of 5. And that's based not just on Spa, but on other very high-speed tracks like La Sarthe. So overall, it's a 3 out of 5. So of the 3 track types, this is the lowest that the TS030 is achieving. Now, as far as high-end handling, I am going to give it a 5, because although it's not brilliant on high-speed tracks, it does handle really well at all speeds. Like I said, mid-range is its weakest, but still good, so I'm still going to give it a strong 5 for high-speed handling. Now, its brakes, we've already mentioned, are a 5. High-speed and low-speed handling are a 5, so overall it's a pretty strong contender for being the best all-round Le Mans car. But now let's go back to the garage for a roundup and to discuss the final aspect, which is drivability. So overall, the TS030 is a brilliant Le Mans car. As I said, it's one of the best despite its straight line disadvantage. But as I mentioned just now, we're now going to discuss the final aspect that I haven't rated this car on yet, and that is overall drivability. And for that, I'm again going to give this car a strong 5 out of 5, because despite its main disadvantage of having so much less power than all of the other prototypes, it's still a brilliant car. It's quick and easy to learn. It will serve you well on most tracks. Sure, some tracks it's not very good on, like Le Sarthe for the long straights. Not so good maybe on tracks like Monza, which, well, pretty much any track that's more based on high-speed sections. Even the Nürburgring to some degree, but it does make up for that in the corners. So overall, it's a brilliant car. I would highly recommend buying one if you haven't done so yet. It's definitely worth putting the time into driving it. Like I said, doesn't take very long to learn. The only real downside, apart from the obvious one of power, is, as I alluded to earlier, the mid-range handling, which can be a little bit skittish sometimes, mainly in mid-range, say 70 or 80 mile per hour corners. It can suffer from a bit of a slippery tail, but it doesn't really affect the car that much. It's not hard to counter, and the car will serve you well. So, overall, what's the car's best point? Well, the best point, I would say, is purely its handling. It's very nimble, it's very grippy, it's very sharp, it's almost the very latest of Le Mans technology, not quite anymore, but pretty up to date. And its biggest downside is its top-end power. But for most tracks, it's still very, very good. So overall, I would highly recommend trying this car out. And yeah, that's about it really. So I'll put, as always, the ratings and lap times in the description of this video so you can compare it to the others if you wish. And as always, thanks for watching.